like? I can drive it. Those are the stage lights you turn off. Those are the stage lights. You want to see what it's like? Yeah, these go down. Yeah.
Oh, is that what they are? Yeah, you turn off the last thing you just did. It makes it weird green light. Yeah.
They were on the whole time. I just turned it off.
One of them is
It's kind
out.
of shady. Yeah, I think it's better. We just leave them up.
Yeah, leave them on.
Or leave them halfway up.
Is there a
The thing I like about having the lights up is it's easier to see the crowd.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, it feels spooky. It just feels spooky.
Yeah, let's leave them on.
Leave them on? Yeah. So, I personally am hungry, and we only had a half hour before showtime, so.
And the food's all there. Food's out and more. Okay, now wait. So this is how we're going out.
I need to look over some stuff, so just you do you, okay?
I'm going to just pull it up. When okay. Maybe we can just give you these.
Hi there, can you hear me? How's this sound? One possibility is just to screen share. Here's the video.
No, wait, I mean, we weren't officially practicing, we were just kind of.
Okay. Actually,
I need to sit with this.
what we need is better.
So, do you want to do a sign language or not?
I like the sign language. Oh, that's really loud, isn't it?
So aside from David, when you did the camera, and also it might be useful to use the Zoom room, because some people will be far away. Does it need to be pointed, or is it just already? Right. Is there a way to test this?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Hello, hello? Okay, good. All right.
Sounding good.
Thank you. Do you need anything else? Okay, great.
So let me look at the schedule again that I got right here. Do you have a schedule with you? Looks like it'll be first Tim, introductions, then Rochelle, then Sarah Purtle with a song, and then I'm third with my story. So after Sarah, so Tim, Rochelle, Sarah, then me. And then it'll move to Rebecca.
Okay, I'll be there.
Would you like me to email you this schedule?
Thank you. I want nothing, thank you. Hello, Ryan, nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you. I'll see your face, I'm sure, better than just a hat and a mask. And, you don't have the list. On some of the things that I sent to the recorder has people the last ones.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and you can write down, and you see people, you can write, this is the order of the people that are going to the record. And you don't have any other. Okay. Hi up there.
There was the, actually in the story that showed, this one, whatever.
Okay. Well, you could ask them, they sent you that information twice. I don't know, should it really be there or how hard it is. Well, I'll just go to this person. Hi, would you like some dinner? Would you like some dinner? Are you sure it's really delicious? It's from Stone Soup. And it's like restaurant quality.
Is Ben going to be performing here at this?
I think so.
Ben going to be performing here at this?
I think so.
Ben going to be performing here at this?
I think so.
That's us.
I think so.
Can you hear me now? Can you see me?
Oh, that's great. Oh. Yes, he is. He is? Yes, that's right.
David, can you give us like a signal when we're on? Can you give us a signal when we're live? Can you give us like a signal like this when we're live?
Travel east from here, where the crow flies. 1,000 years ago, or 10,000 years ago, you would find fish drying racks. You would find Wakantuk people and other tribal nations from as far away as now Ohio coming together to not only fish for salmon and chum and shad, but to share them. It was a place of peace. It was a place of sanctuary. And so we honor that spot with a tenor. Today, it is restored to tribal leadership, one of the few places in the whole country. Nolan and also 4 tribal nations hold it once more in sanctuary. And so as we start here today, we go back to the last known woman leader, the Sun Squad, Masha Lisa. We ask her for her welcome. Welcome, everybody.
Well, welcome to the 37th Annual Winter Solstice Celebration. Tonight is a benefit for 2 causes. The proceeds will be divided equally between the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts and the Refugee Support Program of Temple Israel, which is our host tonight, where we're located. We'll be saying more about each cause that we're benefiting later on in the program. But Those of you who are seeing us online, the links for donating are on the in the chat and also on our event page. And now I'd like to introduce our first performer and also our MC for the rest of the evening, Rochelle Wildfong. Rochelle is a poet, a storyteller, and a librarian at the Meekins Library in Williamsburg, Massachusetts. And she is now telling stories to the children of children that she was stamping out books to when they were kids. And she's also shepherd for 2 Cheviot sheep, our Dolly Madison and Abigail Adams, who at this moment are probably chewing their cud. And Rochelle will be going to present her one-woman adaptation of an original Mummers play. Rochelle.
I am but a fool to think, weeping for the play, where we say, we'll act the youth, we'll act the age, we'll act what's never before been seen on stage. For we shall fight, and we shall fall, but we shall try to please you all. And if you don't believe what I say, in comes I, old saddle sore, but we come to wish you cheer. Money in your pockets all this year. And if you don't believe what I say, in comes I, old Mother Time. I'll do my best to make a rhyme. Hard times we want. Old Mother Time will not be forgot. And if you don't believe what I say, whoops, not the fool. In comes I, old man Winter. I was once young, I think it was September. What kind of an animal is that? I'm a horse, the smartest horse north of the equator. I can add and subtract without a calculator. See, 2 plus 2. 2 minus 2. 357 times 599.9999. What's that cold chill up my spine? Why, in comes I, Mother of Death. I am not proud. I've come, dear mother, to fit your son for a shroud. Now, how do you think you can do that? With cards, a game of chance, high card wins. But no, Winter is my most loyal son. But I have a lucky orange clover. And I know I have a trusty, rusty rabbit's foot. Just remember who you're playing. My card. What are you going to say? marshmallows. What can you cure? Well, I can cure the itch and the stitch, and the pain within, and the pain without, and I can cure the bone, and the stone, and the eye bone. Seriously, doctor, what have you been? Well, you know, I've been up the hill and down the hill, and I was over in the fields too, you know, Springfield, Westfield, Northfield. Why, I was all over to the land of ocean. But Mother, I think we should be letting the surgery begin. Exploratory that it is. Oh, tisk is not looking very good. Oh, what is it? Oh, what's this? Oh, and this? Oh, what is this? Oh, 6 results! I guess the cat's out of the bag. I think we should just be putting it back. What's this? A pulse? Oh, now I think I'm getting to the heart of it. I live. I live. Oh, what a curious thing. I died this winter, and now I'm spring. Don't you love spring? Yes. And now, our play is through. We mummers bid you adieu. You've seen our play of seasons change, and we hope it hasn't been too soon. We wish you all a peaceful year, joy, plenty of cheer, and hope to see you again next year, when we can be together and really hold hands and form a chain and sing it with me, if you know it. Let's rise up drunk and sing this song, for the summer is short and the winter lasts long. All hold hands and form a chain, till we leave the springtime bloom again.
In comes I, with knees a knockin'. Time to get this guitar rockin'.
Welcome Sarah Purtle from Shelburne Falls. Sarah will be sharing tonight 3 songs that she wrote. They're all Solstice songs about hope, and they'll be sprinkled through the performance. The first is called New Year's Song. She heard it in a dream on Solstice a year ago. She writes new songs each week and created a place on the web for her songs to be heard and downloaded for free, including this one. There are 75 there. To find it, go to Sarah Hope Sings.
We're building up a new world, building up a new So let's do some bits. Because in the next verse, she said we'd do closing the divide, climbing up this hill. 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 That's good news. Oh, that's good news. We're building up a new world. Add your voice. We're building up a new world. Add your voice. We're building up a new world. Add your voice. Oh, we're building up a new world. Add your voice. That's good news. Oh, that's good news. I feel a new day coming. I feel a new day coming. I feel a new day coming. And that's good news. Oh, that's good news. And that's good news. Oh, that's good news.
Joe, we need people on the mic. Nobody can hear as well.
Our next performer is coming in on Zoom. How exciting is that? This is our life, right? So Maggie David Arpa, Hebrew for storyteller and educator, celebrates Judaism's diverse storytelling heritage and ancient environmental wisdom. David also engages in story listening through his newer work as a healthcare chaplain. He currently provides full-time grief support for Bay State Hospice. Along with 2 CDs of family stories, he has produced an award-winning performance, The Jar of Tears, which is a memorial for the Rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto. David lives in the Berkshire foothills along the Deerfield River. The title of his story is Greenfield's First Rabbi. Just where does the Greenfielder Rabbi go during the days of the new year? Baruch, a skeptical scholar from Amherst, wants to know. This tale is an adaptation of a Yiddish tale written by I.L. Peret. The title of the story is Greenfield's First Rabbi. Just where does the Greenfielder Rabbi go during the days of the new year? Baruch, a skeptical scholar from Amherst, wants to know. This tale is an adaptation of a Yiddish tale.
Dedicated to Felicia Skull, whose memory is a blessing. Dedicated to Felicia Skull, whose memory. The Jews of Greenfield and the whose memory the Jews of Greenfield and the This story is dedicated to Felice Yeskel, whose memory is a blessing. Felice Yeskel, whose memory the Jews of Greenfield and the Jews of Greenfield and the Jews of Amherst were as different as day and night. Up here in Greenfield, we're simple folk, close to the earth. The Jews of Greenfield like to plant greens in the early spring, enjoy blueberries at the height of summer, eat apple pie for breakfast. The Jews of Greenfield and the Jews of Amherst were as different as day and night. Up here in Greenfield, but down in Amherst, we're simple, where 9 out of 10 people are scholars like to plant greens in the early spring. It's no blueberries at the height of summer. In this story, apple pie one the Jews of Greenfield and the Jews of Amherst were as different as day and night. Baruch he taught here in Greenfield down in Amherst. 8 simple, where 9 out of 10 people the students are not like plant greens in the early spring. I mean, it wasn't one of the sexy blueberries at the height of summer. Crop management. In this story, apple pie one. It was 1911. The Jews of Amherst. So when his uncle Itcher is different, wrote him a note saying Greenfield and Amherst. 8 simple, where 9 out of 10 people the students are not like greens in the early spring. I mean, it wasn't one of the sexy blueberries Jewish in the summer. Crop management. This story, apple pie one. It was 1911. The Jews of Amherst. So when his uncle Itcher is different, wrote him a note saying Greenfield and Amherst. 8 simple, where 9 out of 10 people the students are not. Wow, that was an experience. So, how about if folks can folks hear me all right? Maybe I'll just tell it the old-fashioned way. It sounds like the video is still going. Okay. It sure was. That was a one-of-a-kind experience. That's what happens.
It was a psychedelic experience.
Yes, indeed. So here's the story of Greenfield's first rabbi. Ready to hear? This is the story is dedicated to Felice Yeskel, whose memory is a blessing. The Jews of Greenfield and the Jews of Amherst were as different as day and night. Up here in Greenfield, we're simple folk. We're close to the earth. We like to plant greens in the early spring, enjoy blueberries at the height of summer, enjoy apple pie at the harvest festival at Sukkot, often from apples from our own trees. But down in Amherst, where 9 out of 10 people are scholars at the university, well, it's no different with the Jewish community either. And this story is about one such scholar. His name, Baruch. Now, teaching Talmud 101 at 8 a.m., the students were not like just trying to break down his door, as you can imagine. It wasn't one of the sexy classes like, crop management. I mean, it was 1911 after all. And so when his uncle Itchela wrote him a note saying there was a new rabbi in Greenfield and that he was such a person, and he had a library too, that's what got Baruch. And right there before the new year, well, meaning like, the end of summer session, because it's a Jewish story after all, before Rosh Hashanah, he went up to Greenfield. He walked. He went up Mount Sugarloaf along the Pecumtuck Ridge and then down to the synagogue. And when he got there, he went right for the library. And he was impressed. Volumes of Talmud and Midrash, biblical commentary too, by Rashi and Ibn Ezra. There was a whole volume of the Zohar, a complete set, Judaism's main mystical text, and other books by Moshe Cordovero, and Yitzchak Luria, and other authors that Baruch had never even heard of. Who was this rabbi? Well, he asked the Shamash, the one who cares for the synagogue, but he wanted to meet him, but the Shamash said, the Rebbe, where else would the Rebbe be? The Rebbe is in the heavenly realms, making sure all the good deeds of us here in Greenfield are not forgotten. Well, Baruch was very skeptical. He rolled his eyes, said, heavenly realms, heavenly realms. He pulled down a volume of the Talmud, opened up and said, look right here. It says right here, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our great teacher, never got closer than 2.5 steps to heaven. And you're saying your rabbi, the Rebbe, is there right now? Well, where is he then? I don't know, and I don't care. But if there's one thing a scholar likes more than anything else, is to know something that other people don't know. So he created a plan. And he actually went to the rabbi's house and he hid under his bed. He was going to find out for himself. And he waited till late in the night. And the rabbi finally came home, went to his bed. He sat down with a groan and began the Slichot prayer, prayers of reflection. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, 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 ay. And it was right then Baruch began quivering like a fish. I mean, here he was, the days before the new year, the days of judgment themselves, and he's spying on the new rabbi in Greenfield hiding under his bed. But then he steeled himself in his heart. He took a big breath and he told himself, well, research is research. And he kept himself awake by just repeating in his head all those verses of Talmud he had memorized. And it wasn't long before the early hours of the morning, before the sun was up, where the rabbi got up out of bed. He went, put on some canvas pants, a strong linen shirt, put on some work boots, amazing work boots with the lower sole bound to the upper sole with such stitching, it was like all of one seam. And he went and got a rope for his shoulder and a hatchet for his belt, and he left. Baruch followed from a distance. And where did he go? He went to Highland Park. He went to Highland Park and he started gathering up all these branches and this wood. And he made this giant pile and he used his hatchet and he formed it and shaped it. And then he took his rope and he wrapped it around all that wood. And then he turned down to his back and he walked all the way into Greenfield to Federal Street. And there at the first house, put down that wood and he knocked on the door. And Baruch, even from a distance, could hear an old woman call out from inside, "Who is it?" It is I, Ivan, the wood chopper. I have wood for sale, 1 penny. Oh, I am cold, but I have no money for wood. My dear woman, you believe in the goodness of this world, yes? When you receive a penny next, then you give it to the next wood chopper that comes. And then we'll be, how do they say in America? Even Steven. Oh, aren't you a nice man? But I'm too sick to even get out of bed. Do not worry, that comes with the 1 penny. And with that, the rabbi entered into this woman's home, went right over to the wood stove, opened it up, and began kindling a fire. And as the flame started going, well, he began his prayers of reflection again. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ah, when Baruch realized what the rabbi was doing, he couldn't help himself. He leapt up from under the window where he was hiding and he joined in. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. And together they sang. Ay, 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 ay. And it was right then that Baruch, he became a student of the Greenfield Rebbe. In fact, he moved his whole family from Amherst to Greenfield. He didn't have a lot of money. He was adjunct after all. And he had the smallest house in town. Well, actually, it was a sugar shack, but that's another story. Enough to say that every year thereafter, whenever anyone would say, "Where's the Rebbe?" and someone else would say, "The Rebbe. The Rebbe's in the heavenly realms. Where else would he be?" Baruch, he was always there to add, saying, "Yes, my friend, the Rebbe is in the heavenly realms, and maybe even higher." Thank you. Now back to Rochelle and the gang in the synagogue.
Our next performer, Rebecca Tippins, loves to help bridge cultural differences through story, theater, and facilitating direct connections based on promises for international love that she made when she was in her 20s to Russians, Armenians, and Georgians while working in the Soviet Union. She implemented the Pioneer Valley Soviet-American Exchange Program, in which Ukrainians and Russians were hosted in homes throughout Franklin and Hampshire counties. Becky will share a story that many a Russian child hears in this wintry season as they drift off to sleep. Babushka and the Three Kings.
It was a rather typical Russian village. There was a main road that went right through the town. Oh, back? There was a main road that went right through the town. And over on the left, beyond the village, beyond the meadows, there was a pond, and people would swim in it and fish. And in the winter, they would even skate. And on the other side of the road, there was a forest. And people would go inside of the forest to collect berries and mushrooms and wood to bring to their stoves to warm themselves on the cold winter nights. And they also used that wood to create their homes along both sides of that road that ran through what became a village. Now, these homes, called izbas, had very pointed gable roofs because that way the snow would fall off easier. And in the front, along the rake of that gable, they made beautiful carvings. It was really lovely. And the children, they would play in that street, and all of the adults in town would watch over them as they may jump rope or push each other on sleds. And the children called all of the grown-up men Jaja, uncle, and the women they would call Chocha, auntie, except for the one warm and generous woman who lived in the izba that was the second from the end, the green one, before you left the town. Everyone called her Babushka because she was the grandmother of all grandmothers. She loved it when people came to visit, and so if there was someone passing through the town, the children would point them into her direction, as her house was a little bit bigger, but they also knew that she would collect stories and share them with them afterwards. And so Babushka, waiting for someone to visit, dedicated her life to making her house as hospitable and lovely as possible in order to welcome guests, be they village people or those who were traveling from far away. You would enter her house and never see a speck of wood on her sideboard, and neither would you see a spot of red borscht soup on her tablecloth, for she would always keep everything impeccably clean and ready for the next visitor, always a pot of borscht simmering on her stove. Well, it was one wintry night, and it was cold outside, and everyone had gone inside early to snuggle around their snow stoves when they heard a tinkling of bells, and then a moaning and groaning sound. Oh, this, thought the children, and they ran outside, and they saw 3 men, elegantly dressed, like sails, stoles, and one of them had a beautiful colored turban, another had another colored turban, and another had a crown on his head, and there were even jewels impregnated into the saddles. It must be a retinue from the Tsar, the children screamed delightedly. No, no, said the men. We're just traveling through, but our animals are tired. That's why they're complaining. Is there a place where we might rest? And they showed the gentleman to Babushka's house, and she welcomed them with open arms, sat them down, put bowls of borscht on the table, brown bread beside them, and begged the children, please take these animals, strange although they were, big humps on their backs, to have something to drink and some hay. And then, when everything was all sorted out and people were assuaging their hunger, she sat down and she asked, what are you doing on such a cold winter night when there's not even a sliver of a moon in the sky? How can you see where to go? Said the men, all in one voice. Well, that's what we like, you see. We are scholars of the stars. We know all about the constellations, their prophecies and their legends. And then one amongst them stood up, took Babushka by her hand, led her to the door, took her outside, pointed her towards the east, and pointed up to the sky. See that star there? It's It's never been seen before. How could she miss it? It was so bright and glorious. The prophecies say that when a new star appears in the sky, that has not been seen before, it is because it is born above the birthplace of the baby who is destined to be the Prince of Peace on earth. Oh, Babushka thought, and then she was turned back inside, and the men said, "We are on a journey to give honor and homage to him." And they opened their bags, and they took out the presents that they were going to offer this Prince of Peace. There was gold and frankincense and myrrh. Babushka looked on with such longing and delight in her face that the kings, the wise men, said, "Well, why don't you join us?" Said Babushka. And then she looked at the empty bowls that needed to be cleaned and the breadcrumbs that were on the table and thought, what way do I have? It's half as beautiful to be able to give the babe who was born to be Prince of Peace. But she was really wanting to go. "I have an idea," she said. "How about if you go on ahead, and then I'll get my things together and follow you later." And so after the wise men had rested, she bade them goodbye, and then rushed back inside to her cabinet, where she kept small toys that she would give to the children of the mothers who came to have tea with her so that they would have something to play with. Well, she pulled them out, but oh my goodness, they were so dusty and unpolished, they weren't even fit to share with the little children in town, much less the Prince of Peace. And so she sat working, polishing and dusting and making them all quite beautiful again. She even pulled out paintbrushes to fix where the paint had chipped off on some places. So she put those aside to dry and sparkle, and then she thought, the children and the mother, they might be hungry, I'll make them some cookies. And so she went to work to make some cookies, and then she thought, oh my goodness, it might be a long journey, I better make some bread for me to eat too. And so she made that, and then she thought, what am I going to wear to greet the Prince of Peace? Well, she had one dress that she wore for all celebrations. I guess I'll wear that. And she pulled it out. Oh, but she had forgotten that at the last wedding celebration, she had torn the pocket carrying a bottle of... But now she had to sew it up. And so she sat down and she did her mending, and then it's a little wrinkly, so she hung it up and let it drip its wrinkles out. And then she started packing, and she was ready to go after she did a little sweep and cleaning of those bowls, because she didn't want, when she was gone, any mices to come in. Anyway, she was finally ready, and she went out. Now, when she left, it was light outside, but she knew that the direction that the kings had gone in. So she just started on out. But in northern Russia, at this time of year, the days are very, very short. And soon it was that night covered the entire sky. And she looked up to find the stars so she would know where to go. But she didn't see it in the sky. it wasn't there. And so when she came to a fork in the road, she didn't know which way to go. Oh, I guess I'll go left. Well, the people say that Babushka never found the babe in that stable in Bethlehem. But, they say, she is still looking. And she goes on the night of the Three Kings to the house where there are little children sleeping in bed. And like the Tooth Fairy does for us, she slips underneath the pillow a cookie or a little toy, because who knows, this might be the child who brings peace to earth.
Our next performer is a professional juggler, author, motivational humorist, and recovering perfectionist. Rob Peck. Rob wears many hats. Tonight he'll sport a derby. And at times the derby will be sporting him. When the hat smoothly rolls down his arm, Rob looks suave and, dare I say, Durbonaire. But the roles are reversed when the hat has a mind of its own and no one knows who's manipulating whom. But the result is bound to be highly theatrical. Please give an unambiguously warm welcome to our favorite juggling jester, Rob Peck, with his debonair, the hat trick, takeoffs, and put-ons.
Isaac is a writer, singer, and actor who works in nonprofit arts administration and loves to read things out loud. At this darkest time of year, we often think about people who have meant so much to us in seasons past. Christie's grandfather, a teller of tales and jokes, was the inspiration for this story, published in Pennsylvania Magazine a few years ago. It's called Zucchini Summer. Isn't it sweet to remember loved ones and summer and this time of cold and dark?
Grandpa and I are going up to the back cornfield. We might get to see Big Bear, the biggest, meanest bear there ever was. Is he in there? Well, no, I don't really know. Wouldn't surprise me at all. He mostly likes cornfields best. You know what to do if you meet Big Bear, don't you? Tell me. Well, when he comes running at you with his mouth wide open to eat you up, well, you just reach your arm in there and feel around till you find his tail. Then you grab a hold of it and you pull so hard that you turn him inside out, and then he's facing the other direction. Well, he's running away from you. Isn't that right? Yes. How old are you again? 7. When I was your age, I was 9. Tell me a story from then, from when you were a kid. All right. I believe I shall. Now, when I was a boy, living on the farm near Snydertown, we must have been poor, but we sure didn't know it. We always had more than enough to eat. Well, it seemed like everything that we planted in that good Pennsylvania soil just grew like the dickens. Why, one summer, when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, my father planted a zucchini squash that grew and grew until it was bigger than the barn. Now, in August, at harvest time, we didn't bring in field hands for that zucchini squash. No, sir. We brought in a team of coal miners. They lit their headlamps and broke through the blossom and excavated with picks and shovels. They pulled out wheelbarrows and carts full of squash. It took a right long time, and oh boy, were we ever busy. We dried zucchini, we pickled zucchini, we made zucchini chow-chow. We ate zucchini cake, zucchini pie, zucchini fritters. Well, we set seeds big as sheep out in the sun to dry to save for winter sleds and for shingle in the barn. We paid those coal miners in zucchini. We used zucchini for horse feed, pig feed, chicken feed, and to feed the cows till the milk ran green. We stuffed zucchini in sausage casings and we smoked slabs of it like bacon. Yes, sir. We had squash and plenty, all right. Felt like we might be made out of squash ourselves. Now, when those miners were done, all that was left of that squash was the smooth green shell. Now, it was tough like leather. We were thinking we might tan it for shoes. But this rich fella out from Shamokin, he drove by in his shiny black Ford and he bought it on the spot. Well, he had so much money that he baled it like hay and kept it in his barn because it wouldn't all fit in the bank. But when that rich fella got some other fellas out in the field, and the next thing we knew, they fixed a basket to that zucchini and made themselves a hot air balloon. Oh, it made an awful racket, but sure enough, they filled that squash with hot air and up it went. Well, people came from miles around to watch. It was better than any parade, I tell you, seeing that vegetable floating around up there in the crowds. Then it started losing altitude. It dropped down until it was close enough for us to figure what was going on. You see, all that hot air cooked up the squash from the inside out until the soft and green shell just couldn't hold air any longer. Now, the rich fellow tried to steer out to the soybean field for a smoother landing, but instead, that zucchini balloon landed sideways right atop of the hen house, and the heifermen just hard cooked all the eggs right there in their boxes. Well, they couldn't leave the squash up there on the roof. So everybody, including that rich fellow, grabbed a spoon, passed around a salt shaker, and ate every last bit of that zucchini right off of the hen house. Grandpa, did you grab a spoon to eat it too? Well, now, Chrissy, I'd be a liar if I said I did. What did you do? Well, I'll tell you. As soon as that squash landed, I knew it had to get it one way or t'other. So I ran lickety-split in the other direction, straight to the cornfield to hide. The cornfield! Grandpa, weren't you afraid of Big Bear? Well, the truth is, I didn't give a whistle about Big Bear just then. He could have come and ate me up and welcome to it, I reckon, just so long as I did not have to eat one more speck of that gigantic zucchini squash. And my grandfather did grow up on a farm. He was actually the son of sharecroppers in rural Pennsylvania. And this song, if I can get my phone right here, it was inspired by him and by my very, very dear friend Heidi. And it's basically a love letter to them and to all the farmers who work all day to make sure that there's enough food. So let me just get my little piano function out here because we have that magic ability. Get a couple notes. My grandpa grew up on this farm so many years ago. That oak tree knew him when he was a boy, swinging through bright fields of hay and hoeing rows of beans all day, harvesting the sorrow and the joy in the fields of jade and malachite, the beats like garnets in the light, the gift of sudden rains, the waves of amber grains, the ruby berries in the morn, the silver tassels on the golden corn. So tell me, why was it so hard to make a living when all he could see were acres of riches from the earth? He said, our pockets, they were empty, but our plates were always full. We sure were poor, although we didn't know it. We saw the bounty all around. We planted a seed in this good ground, and God and Dad and Mama, they could grow it in the fields of jade and malachite, the beats like garnets in the light, the gift of sun and rains, the waves of amber grains, the ruby berries in the morn, the silver tassels on the golden corn. So tell me, why was it so hard to make a living when all they could see were acres of riches from the earth? And now I'm plowing for rows in the fields he plowed before, rich in seeds I banked another year. But just as in my grandpa's day, the wealth I have is not in pay. I wish the world would recognize the treasure growing here in these fields of jade and malachite, the beats like garnets in the light, the gift of Waves of amber rings, ruby berries in the morn, the silver tassels on the golden corn. Now tell me, why is it so hard to make a living when all I can see are acres of riches from you? When all I can see are acres of riches from the earth.
Now Tim is going to talk to us all a little bit about the food bank.
Our pockets were empty, but our plates were always full. Having enough to eat is such a basic need that so many other things depend on. Food insecurity was already a serious problem before the pandemic, and now it's grown much worse. The Food Bank of Western Massachusetts is a fantastic organization that provides food to food pantries, meal sites, and shelters that provide emergency food assistance to individuals, families, seniors, and people with disabilities. They even have a couple farms growing produce for these programs and for schools in high-poverty school districts. They're also working to develop long-term solutions to the underlying causes of hunger in our region. All the donations for this event will be divided equally between the food bank and the refugee support project of our host tonight, Temple Israel. Please make a donation to help them both in their vital work. You can go to templeisrael.org, click on Payments and Donations, and on purpose of your contribution, scroll down to 37th Annual Solstice Celebration. If you're viewing this on Zoom or YouTube, there's a link at the top of the chat section to a donation page. There's also a link on our Facebook event page. Thank you for your generosity and the light you are shining.
Temple Israel Greenfield.org.
Correction, to templeisraelgreenfield.org.
And now, tonight, John Puccino celebrates the way stories of many kinds appear like some kind of magic, and how when we share them, they get woven into the tapestries of our lives. John's been telling stories as long as I've known him, going back to when we began telling stories in our living rooms, then formed the Western New England Storytellers Guild, where this particular solstice celebration was originated. He was hooked, he leaped, he leapt, he flew into the storytelling profession, and people all over the world would exclaim, "What is it? A bird? A plane? No, it's Super John Puccino!" With his story, which is stranger, truth or fiction.
I didn't know any of that was coming. So, tonight I want to play a game with you. A storytelling game I've known for 50 years. It's brought me joy, it's brought me connection, and yes, which is stranger, truth or fiction? The way it works is somebody tells a story from their life. Put your thumb up if you know what I mean. You two at home. It could be a true story, it could be a fiction story, right? Thumbs up. It could take 10 seconds, like a delightful story I heard recently from a 6-year-old. It could take 10 minutes. You with me? You could work it, the storyteller could work it and hone it to make it just right, or you could tell it off the cuff. It doesn't matter. When the story's over, everyone takes their thumb like that. Go ahead. Put it in the house. We'll count together. 1, 2, 3. You throw up your thumb if you think that was a true story. You throw down your thumb if you think, nah, that guy, or that gal, or that he, she, they made that up. Right? Got it? That's all there is to it. I forewarn you before I begin, the best fiction stories always have a bit of the truth in them. So here goes. Let's start with a question. How many people here or at home, I can see through that camera, how many of you people has ever made a homemade apple pie? 2/3, 3/4, almost everyone here. Well, then you know that making a pie from scratch, an apple pie from scratch, it's a piece of work. And you have to start with that certain determination that this is going to be the best, the greatest, finest pie ever made in the history of humanity. It'll have the flakiest, butteriest crust, your pie. It will be heaped high with fresh, tart, peeled apples, sweetened with sugar, not too much, not too little, just right, spiced up with a little cinnamon and nutmeg and the magic spice, just a wee pinch, you know what it is? Allspice. Dot the top with butter, carefully roll the top crust onto the top off of the rolling pin, and wait till the oven is preheated. And now you're ready to put the pie in the oven. It isn't long before the smells are drifting around the house and every nose is sniffing. Am I right? A few minutes later, every mouth is salivating. And you wait until it's that perfect golden brown top with the filling just bubbling up, just out of the slits you delicately cut onto the top. Well, that night, we made 2 pies. One for the neighbor who had done a big favor and wouldn't be paid for it. The other pie we cut into 5 large slices. And we delivered 3, one to the old friend up the road who lives by himself now. 2 to the next door neighbor, single mother and her daughter. And 2, of course, for us. And so when the pies were all delivered, we came home and my love set to lighting a fire in the wood stove. And I went to plate the last 2 slices of pie. I plated one and brought it to the little coffee table, and back into the kitchen I went. And as I was plating the other, I was thinking to myself, a slice of pie, like this, still warm from the oven, I don't know why, but it makes me a truly happy man. Slice of pie like this, still warm from the oven, on a comfy couch in front of a crackling fire on the first cold day of the season, next to my love. It makes me feel like I had a taste of heaven right here on earth. Well, everything was set for such a perfect moment, and I plated the second slice, and I was walking out to the couch, prepared for this wonder, when I recognized that I had to pee. And I thought, well, I probably ought to take a pee before, I eat this thing. It'll be more fun. So there was a little half bathroom right there, and I went into the bathroom, and pretty soon, there I was, standing above the toilet, holding the plate with the pie on top. And I'm thinking thinking to myself, you probably ought to put that down on the bathroom counter, you know what I mean? Before you do your business, you know what I mean? Now, who here remembers Newton's first law of motion? Do you remember it? How about you at home? Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. Objects that are still tend to stay still. So I moved the plate, and the plate stayed in motion. But the pie that was still on top of the plate, it tended to stay still. And pretty soon, the plate was out from underneath the pie, and I watched as the slice for one teeny tiny moment froze, and then it took a nosedive, right into the toilet. Now, the mind is a truly amazing thing. For in that single second, I thought 3 different things. First, I screamed, "No!" Then, I shouted to myself, "Quick, take it out. You remember the 5-second rule, don't you?" And then, the guru inside said, "Don't be attached, John. The 5-second rule does not apply in this situation, John. Let it go, John. And besides, it's exactly where it's going to end up tomorrow anyway." So, I cleaned up the mess, and I washed my hands twice. And soon I was out on the couch in front of the fire, sharing the one piece of apple pie, though a little small, delicious. And as we sat there eating together, I heard myself saying to my sweetheart, you know, I'm a pie purist. There's nothing for me like a slice of apple pie warm out of the ice cream. No ice cream for me. I think it takes a good slice of pie down a notch. But you know one thing I like less than pie a la mode? Pie a la mode. And my friends, the laughter that followed that, well, what can I say? If there was ever such a thing as heaven on earth, the laughter that followed was a slice of heaven. And that's my story. Thumbs up, thumbs in the house. Truth or fiction? 1, 2, 3. We're about 3/4 true. That story was 100% true. I hope you play that game with your family. It's a great way to spend some time.
Storyteller is Goldspinner. with a little help from our friends here. Jay is an old woman. She says she's an old woman. And that means, my friends, she's part magic. She's been in almost every solstice celebration from the beginning that we've had until now. Jay will be telling a poem by Mary Oliver, The Buddha's Last Words.
Every day, I sit in my rocking chair and look out the window toward the west, and I watch the sunset. It comforts me to know that every day the sun comes up, goes across the sky, and then goes down, no matter what. This is a poem by Mary Oliver, The Buddha's Last Words. I'm going to say it to you once, and then I'm going to say it again, like a chant. And in the end, please don't clap. Just sit and let it in. Make of yourself a light, said the Buddha before he died. I think of this every morning as the east begins to tear off its many clouds of darkness to send up the first signal, a white fan streaked with pink and violet, even green. An old man, he lay down between two salad trees, and he might have said anything, knowing it was his final hour. The light burns upward, it thickens and settles over the fields. Around him, the villagers gathered and stretched forward to listen. Even before the sun itself hangs disattached in the blue air, I am touched everywhere by its ocean of yellow waves. No doubt he thought of everything that had happened in his difficult life. And then I feel the sun itself as it blazes over the hills like a million flowers on fire. Clearly, I'm not needed, yet I feel myself turning into something of inestimable value. Slowly, beneath the branches, he lifted his head. He looked into the faces of that wondering crowd. Make of yourself a light, said the Buddha before he died. I think of this every morning as the east begins to tear off its many clouds of darkness to send up the first signal, a white fan streaked with pink and violet, even green. An old man, he lay down between two salad trees, and he might have said anything, knowing it was his final hour. The light burns upward, it thickens and settles over the fields. Around him, the villagers gathered and stretched forward to listen. Even before the sun itself hangs disattached in the blue air, I am touched everywhere by its ocean of yellow waves. No doubt he thought of everything that had happened in his difficult life. And then I feel the sun itself as it blazes over the hills like a million flowers on fire. Clearly, I'm not needed. Yet I feel myself turning into something of inestimable value. Slowly, beneath the branches, he lifted his head. He looked into the faces of that wondering crowd. Make of yourself a light, he said. Thank you.
Now here's another Solstice song by Sarah. It's called Family of Gold.
So happy to be joined by Christy.
We're all glad to be joined by her.
Pass
about the Refugee Support Committee here at the temple. It formed a few years ago to support refugees in Syria. And we collected clothing and other goods that were needed by an organization that shipped things across the ocean to them. And since that time, we have shifted to supporting the work of the Jewish Family Service in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is bringing in, hosting, helping to support, start a new life for refugees from Afghanistan in Western Massachusetts. And some people are joining a committee to do personal work, helping people, driving them places, speaking with them, helping them sign up for things, learn how to use the buses. And others are providing financial support, and eventually when we know what's needed, also objects from the home that will be helpful for them. So your support will go to the Jewish Family Service and support these new people coming to the United States and needing a lot of help.
And just a reminder, the donation page, you can find it at templeisraelgreenfield.org and go to the donations page, and there's a spot where there's a choice for what you donate it to, and you scroll down to 37th Annual Solstice, Winter Solstice Celebration, etc. It's a long one. And thank you all for your support. All of the donations will be equally divided between the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts and the Refugee Support Project. Winter solstice, although we're not quite at that time, is a time of turning. It's a time of darkness, but it's a time of hope for light. And there's a theme in Jewish thought about lachen mit Tränen, to laugh with tears. The joy of light is mixed with sadness, the sadness of darkness. So, this is something that happens in connection with Jewish weddings. Why do we break a glass at a Jewish wedding? It's to remind us that even in the moment of our joy, can't do this the way Rob did, even at the moment of our greatest joy, we must be aware of the sadness and brokenness that exists in our world, and that we are called upon to heal it. So, as Badchen, as the wedding singer, what do I say to the bride and groom? Bride and groom, relatives and friends, listen to what the Badchen has to say today. Today is a day of joy without end. But the fiddle is trembling, and the flute sobs away. Here sits the bride, beautiful as the day, and here's the fiddle. What's it got to say? Beauty is beauty, but it soon fades away. So says the fiddle. Now flute, speak if you may. Life is a shadow, and happiness too. Beauty soon fades, won't come back into view. Thus says the Badchen, as he sheds a tear too. But here sits the groom, clothed like a king, and the bride in her gown, queen of the day. Relatives and guests, in your honor I sing, but over us all, the flute still sobs away. Chossen kale, mechetonem und frei, hält was es darschend der Badchen heim. Hoi heint ist der Tag von Glück und von Freude, hoi es zittert der Fiedel und es klippet die Flöte. Oh, es zittert der Fiedel und es klippet die Flöte. Und sitzt die Kalle schön wie der Tag und Wasser der Fiedel sagt wie der Sorg. Weil die Schönheit ist schön, nur die Schönheit vergeht. Oh, ja, so sagt der Fiedel, nur Wasser die Flöte. Oh, ja, so sagt der Fiedel, nur was sagt die Flöte. A Schatten das Leben, a Schatten das Glück. Die Schönheit vergeht und sie kommt nicht zurück. A so sagt der Badchen mit Hering in Blick. Und es ist der Chassin, Samet und Seid, und die Kalle scheint euch in ihr Bekleid. Mechetonim und Gäst, bekovet der Leid, und über sie alle, es klippet die Flecht. Und über sie alle, es klippet die Flecht. Kalle tanzen, nein, ja, 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 ja. Mit der Kalle tanzen, nein, ja, 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 ja. Mit der Kalle tanzen, ai, 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 ai. Mit der Kalle tanzen, ai, 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 ai. Thank you.
So I want everyone to know who these two people are. There is Yosel Kurlan, who is singing The Bride and Groom, which is the Yiddish wedding song, and he was accompanied by Peggy Davis. Both members of the Wholesale Klezmer Band, which has performed for traditional Jewish weddings and other celebrations in concert since 1982. And now, our next storyteller is Ronan Leventhal, who has been sharing the power of telling stories for over 3 decades, putting smiles in the heart and laughter in the belly of thousands of people. Tonight she will be telling a story in verse, written by Bob Stromberg, which Bob has graciously given her permission to tell. She first learned the story from one of our favorite storytellers, Jackson Gilman.
Thank you, Rochelle. This is my goose. Or at least, I say he's mine. And I suppose he is for a time. He's injured, you see, and so for a while he's staying with me. No eagle claw, hook beak, furrowed brow, for these he has no need, for he is quite content to feed himself with things amongst the weeds, like fish. It's a dainty dish if you're a goose, or treat. That is not to say, however, and it is wrong to think that he is weak and not strong like the eagle. For though the eagle is though the eagle is stronger in the flight, not more fit for the kill, this goose can fly farther and longer than any eagle will. I've heard much lofty talk about eagles, falcons, and hawks, and it's not my desire, nor would I conspire to bring those big birds down. Who would dare? For when I see him flying so high up there, sometimes but a solitary dot, I can but gaze and wonder and mutter, my gosh, look at that. But as I've implied, whether in the trees or in the skies, eagles and falcons and hawks are almost always alone, or at most in twos. And that's what separates those birds from this goose. Now, I suppose those in Iowa and Nebraska know it best, because the sky is bigger if you live in the West. But even as a lass nestled in the Alleghenies, I saw as many as 1,000 geese airing into view over ember elm and white birch, and maple too. One day, lying alone on the lawn on my back, hearing only the sound of the quack of some far-off track, I saw some 5,000 feet high or more, something to which this day I have never seen before. The head goose, the leader of the V, suddenly veered out, leaving a vacancy, which was quickly filled by the bird behind. The former leader flew alongside the formation, growing wide, and he found himself a spot in the back of the line. They never missed a beat. Well, I was on my feet, gaping mouth, gazing south, wondering what on earth I had seen. And when I told my friends, they said, so? I said, so have you ever seen anything like that before? Susan, Jay, Paul? They said, no, but don't be a bore. Let's go to the park and play ball. So we did. Played a lot of ball when I was a kid. Well, now I'm an adult, and I'm very busy. I suppose that's part of being grown, but the point is I seldom have time alone, not least lying on my back looking for geese. Well, if I see one, it's usually by luck, or I think it's a goose and it's really a duck. Or I might catch a glimpse if I'm stuck in traffic. And that's why I'm thankful to the National Geographic. Because I'll tell you now what they told me, because I'll tell you what they told me, and if you don't believe what I say is true, you can go look it up. For what I witnessed that day as a child has been going on with these geese in the wild since the very first autumn. You see, their bodies are streamlined, their necks like a spear, slicing the wind, breaking the air. From the ground, it's impossible to see, but those wings, they aren't just flapping randomly. When the head goose grabs the wind, air is displaced, which then rushes up to reclaim its space, only to see the smiling face of the bird behind, whose wings just happen to be in the downward position, for a dangerous condition which doesn't last long because the upward rush gives them a push, and they're back to where they belong. That bird then grabs the wind again, which pushes the bird behind, and so it goes on down the line. So the head goose shields the wind, and all the rest are carried by him. In varying degrees, of course, from the front, which is worst, to the back, which is best, with very little effort, or so I've heard, on the part of any one bird. Because when the head goose has had enough, he or she simply drops back and depends on others for strength, when strength is what is lacked. So that is how I found out how the geese can fly from way up north to way down south and back again, but they can't do it alone, you see. It's something they must do in community. Listen, these days, people swell with pride and emotion when they see themselves on the eagle side, solitary, self-sufficient, and strong. But we are where we are. That's something we can't choose. And though many would like to be seen as an eagle, I think God made us more like the goose.
Now, Tim Van Eckman is a storyteller and folk singer. And he's been performing over 35 years all over the place. He's a New England State touring program performer, artist, educator in school residencies. He performs in libraries and senior centers everywhere. He plays, as you can see, the hammered dulcimer. And for many years, he was a contradance caller with the band Swallowtail. He recently created a solo program of songs and stories about community ties entitled Languages of Hope. He lives in the woods of Montague, Massachusetts. And his story is New Year's Eve off I-84.
On the morning of December 30th, 1980, the day before New Year's Eve, I was saying goodbye to my parents after visiting them for Christmas at their home in central Illinois. Now, I brought my hammer dulcimer along with me, not this one, an earlier one, to play for them and for my brother and sister while they were visiting too, and for my parents' friends. And now it was safely packed away in my old Subaru, along with my luggage and the gifts I was bringing back home. Now, we were actually saying goodbye at a gas station because my parents knew that as a struggling folk instrument builder and contradance musician, I didn't make much. So they filled up my gas tank on their credit card, a sign of financial success that I did not have. And then they gave me $50 in cash, and they said, "Is this enough?" Now, $50 sounded like a lot to me in those days, and so I said, "Sure." I wasn't so sure after a day of driving and filling up my tank a number of times and spending the night in a cheap Motel 6 near Youngstown, Ohio. And the next day I set out, and later in the day, as evening was drawing on, New Year's Eve, I found myself in New York State on I-84, and I came to the Newburgh Beacon Bridge, and I paid the toll. And as I was crossing the bridge, I had 50 cents left in my pocket, a quarter tank of gas, and a queasy feeling that I wasn't going to make it, and that I would be stranded. I began to pray that I would make it through somehow. And then it came to me that maybe I could take my hammer dulcimer and I could be a street musician. I could set up somewhere and play for gas money. And so I got off at the first exit after the bridge. And the first place I tried was a restaurant that was so busy it had a line of people out in the January cold waiting for their turn to come in for New Year's Eve dinner. But the manager turned me down when I asked him if I could play for that line of people. But I had better luck at the next place I tried. I went to a Grand Union supermarket at a shopping plaza nearby, and the manager kind of laughed a little. He said, "Sure, you can set up outside the entrance if you want." So I set up my hammer dulcimer and put the instrument case in front of it, and I hand wrote a sign that said, "For gas money for the trip home to Massachusetts, thank you, Happy New Year." And then I put that in my instrument case along with my few coins as seed money. Now, my fingers were getting really cold as I played, and I was getting a few coins, but more than that, from people going in and out of the store, I was getting strange looks. But then, just as my fingers were getting almost too cold to play, out came two middle-aged men, each with a shopping bag in his hands, and they heard me. They stepped closer, and one of them actually reached into his pocket and took out a pocket tape recorder and started recording me. And I thought, I'll play the Irish Washroom, and a lot of people recognize that tune. So I started to play, and they actually linked arms and started dancing around. them came up to me after I finished the tune and said, listen, we're going to a house party where they would love your music. How much would you charge to come and play at that party? Well, I couldn't stay long, but how about $10 worth of gas for an hour of playing? Now, I wasn't a very experienced businessman. But bear in mind, too, that in 1980, the average price for gas was $1.19 a gallon. Times have changed. Well, I followed their car to the gas station where I pumped in the gas and they paid for it. And then I followed them again to a nice residential neighborhood where they parked in front of a split-level house. And they came up to the door and rang the doorbell, and the woman of the house opened the door and greeted them with a big hug and a kiss. And then I came in after them, and she gave me a big hug and a kiss. And then I followed the guys who brought me there downstairs into the recreation room that was full of guests. And the host greeted us from behind the bar with a genuine Irish brogue. And now I had a better idea why these guys thought that I might be a big hit here. So I set up my dulcimer on a coffee table and sat on the sofa next to it to get ready to play while these two guys were excitedly telling the other people there in the recreation room that how they had seen me playing for coins outside the Grand Union and had hired me to come over to play for the party. I started to play, but it was hard because people were so friendly. Are you a vegetarian? I saw you didn't take any meat from the hors d'oeuvres. My son is a vegetarian too. It felt warm and welcoming, but I wanted to not get on the road too late. I wanted to give people a good hour of music before I left. So I did play, and I had to keep my eyes on my instrument to see where I was. When I felt that I had played long enough, I started to pack up, and it was then that I noticed that somebody had put a drinking glass on the table next to the dulcimer, and people had put tips in it. And when I counted it out, not there later, it was more than $20. It felt like a miracle. So I said my thanks and my goodbyes, and I got into my car, and I drove on. And it was a little before midnight and the new year when I finally arrived home in western Massachusetts to the house in Haydenville, near Northampton. And I went in and joined my housemates and their New Year's Eve guests and talked with them for a while. And then I went into my bedroom and into my own wonderful bed. I felt amazed and blessed that I had made it through and made it home with the help of music and the kindness of people that I had met in my detour off I-84. And I felt a new faith and a hope in what good is possible in the world. And that made it already a very happy New Year.
And now our final offering this evening is with Sarah and Christy, Sarah's song called The New Beginning. And we hope
hope that you'll join in on the chorus, which I'm sure they're going to teach us.
This is our last number. And I want to thank Temple Israel for hosting us. You know, our group meets around the whole year, planning for this moment. And really, you can feel how much we root for each other. So going back to the wonderful numbers play, I just want to thank you. Let's give a hand for Rochelle as our announcer. You know when winter bursts into spring. And I'm gonna, just like David was, hi David, we miss you with us. David was quoting like Federal Street and Greenfield, all these places. So if you know Mesa Verde, right near there on the second floor is where Laura Botkin has this sanctuary. So this song is dedicated to Laura. So I went in like the before picture in the numbers play, like with a real pain in the neck. And when I came out from her craniosacral treatment, I was like kicking up my heels. And all of a sudden this song just came to me. It was the weirdest thing. So there I am, you can picture outside of Mesa Verde singing a song because it looked like nobody would hear me. And I could just work on my song there. So I want to just bring us the joy that for all of us that we felt many times in our life when things are kind of going downhill and all of a sudden you have that fresh start. So this song is a wish for all of us. And thank you, Christy and John, for being part of it. And I hope that you'll join in. In fact, this beginning part, we call it the dittas. You can try it. Here it goes. Try it with us. One more. When the light grows dim, we enter in. Time for a new beginning. When the daylight fades, we carry the flame. Time for a new beginning. We carry the light. We carry the light. We carry the light. We carry the light. Is there a place that's closed inside your heart? Open the door, make a new start and go on. Go on. Join us with the dittas. When the trees are bare, find the ones who care. Time for a new beginning. Help the light return. Let your heart yearn. Time for a new beginning. We carry the light.
It's very rare that there's more performers than all but it means a lot that you guys came and supported us.
Yes, thank you for coming, and don't forget to make a contribution if you feel so inclined. The link will be up for how long, Yoshel? A week or two?
Maybe for a long, long time.
Maybe for a long, long time. So if you forget, you can go back there and you can always watch on YouTube if you want to see it again. Thank you, guys.
Yes, the link will remain on YouTube for a long time. And just search for the Temple Israel Greenfield YouTube channel. And again, for the donations, templeisrael.org. templeisraelgreenfield.org. Go to the donations page and find donations for the 37th annual Winter Solstice celebration. Thank you.
One more time. We carry the light. 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 We carry the
Any of you who weren't Jewish before this, you're now Jewish.
Night, everyone.